Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, I'll be talking to that rock genius, one of the creators of Genesis, Peter Gabriel, plus the Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament about his fears on the American withdrawal, and the Foreign Minister, with the great sense of humour too, of the Czech Republic on their attitude to the Euro crisis. But we begin in the South Caucasus, where Europe and Asia meet. 20 years ago, this very week, the Supreme Council in Azerbaijan declared independence from the Soviet Union. The entire Soviet state was crumbling, and the former republics, from Estonia to Tajikistan and so on, became independent countries. Azerbaijan had quite a rocky start, really, because there was a war with neighbouring Armenia over the disputed Nagorno Karabakh region. It cost an estimated 30,000 lives, and the two countries are still, at least in theory, at war right now. But oil and gas finds have pumped huge flows of money into Azerbaijan, and its capital city, Baku, has even won the right to host next year's Eurovision Song Contest because, of course, they won last year's Eurovision Song Contest. So to mark this 20th anniversary of the independence of many republics, but this republic in particular, I travelled to Baku this week to meet with the president, Ilham Aliyev. Mr. President, it's a great joy to be with you here in Baku. We're coming up, of course, to the 20th anniversary of the disintegration of the Soviet Union. What has been the main change or changes in the 20 years as far as Azerbaijan is concerned? How is life different here after that, after the Soviet era?
You can see changes everywhere. It's maybe easier to say where we do not have changes. The most important change is that now our nation is free and independent. Our nation has a great history, culture, traditions, but we were deprived from independence for centuries. We were part of other countries, empires, and the biggest asset what we have is our independence. So now we are free. Our future is in our hands, in the hands of Azerbaijani people. Another important change I would like to underline is that now Azerbaijan is a country with a democratic system and with market economy.
Tell me just for a moment or two about, Mr. President, about Nagorno Karabakh. Do you see there being a peaceful solution to the situation there in the foreseeable future, or could the situation between yourselves and Armenia and so on, could that still lead to war?
Nagorno Karabakh conflict is the biggest threat to the region. And Nagorno Karabakh is a historic part of Azerbaijan. Even the word Karabakh is of Azerbaijani origin. But all Azerbaijanis were expelled from Nagorno Karabakh in the beginning of 90s, and not only from Nagorno Karabakh, but 7 districts surrounding Nagorno Karabakh where Armenians never lived. In total, we have 1 million refugees and internally displaced persons. And from historic point of view, it's our land. From legal point of view, all the international community considers Nagorno Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. United Nations Security Council adopted 4 resolutions demanding withdrawal of Armenian troops from Nagorno Karabakh. So Security Council is a top organization of the world, and other international organizations also. Therefore, we are still hopeful that peaceful solution can be found. That would be in the interest of all the countries. But this solution must be based on international law. Territorial integrity of Azerbaijan must be restored. Armenian forces should leave all the occupied territories. Azerbaijanis should have a right to return to all the territories of their original settlement, including Nagorno Karabakh. And people in Nagorno Karabakh should live in autonomy. And there are good examples of autonomies in the world and in Europe. As far as the situation on the line of contact is concerned, it is very fragile. Peace is very fragile. And actually, we do not have peace.
We don't have peace?
No, we have ceasefire agreement, which was achieved in 1994, and we don't have peace. Therefore, no one can exclude any kind of scenario on the line of contact. Therefore, the sooner solution is found, is the better for everyone, including Armenia.
And as you say, that is, in terms of this region, that is the most dangerous aspect of this region at the moment, is what will happen to Nagorno-Karabakh.
I think so. That is the most dangerous conflict from point of view of predictability. You cannot predict what will happen.
And in terms of democracy, I saw President of the United States talked about a young democracy here in Baku, here in Azerbaijan. How far have you got towards a perfect democracy? You're a young democracy, but how many things have you got to do, whether it's to do with human rights or whatever else? How do you make yourself not just a young democracy, but a full democracy?
I think that the achievements during these 20 years were remarkable. First of all, and the most important, was a strategic choice of development of Azerbaijan. Because when we got independence, especially in the early years, situation here was absolutely different from what we see today. And how Azerbaijan is going to transform, what system will be, how to say, acceptable to our people was a big question. And the strategic choice to build a democratic state was made. And all what has been done since that time was a result of that strategic choice. Today, we have a political system which we never had in all the history of our nation. We have democratic institutions, we have free press, we have free internet, and I can tell you, not every country has free internet. We have more than 50% of internet users in Azerbaijan. We joined various international organizations, for instance, Council of Europe, which main agenda is human rights and democracy, and for 10 years we are members of these organizations. Also, Azerbaijan voluntarily joined the European Union's Eastern Partnership Program. We did it, again, I'd like to mention voluntarily, nobody forced us to do it. So all these are signs of our strategic choice. And we are transforming our economy and also political system. And our target is to become a developed country. Without strong democratic institutions, it is not possible. Therefore, political reforms, democratic reforms, and economic reforms in Azerbaijan are carried out at the same time. And we also understand that without economic potential, democratic achievements would be less efficient.
Fair enough. And when you see these sort of headlines in these various papers, the Euro Parliament condemns Azeri human rights violations, references to torture and freedom of expression and so on, is that something that is wounding to you, or is it something you say, well, we know there are things like that we've got to improve on?
No, frankly speaking, we, in most of the cases, just ignore these kind of unfriendly steps. But we discuss it very seriously with our partners in those organizations which initiate these kind of moves against Azerbaijan. In this case, there should be no double standards. Unfortunately, in the neighboring Armenia, where government killed peaceful protesters in March 2008, an army killed more than 10 people and arrested a lot of politicians, European Parliament never adopted any kind of resolution like that. Why? Probably because of a strong Armenian lobby in European countries. But when it comes to Azerbaijan, with some minor episode, some of them try to create a big deal of that. There should be single standard policy towards all the countries of the Southern Caucasus, whether it touches the unresolved conflicts or democratic development. Unfortunately, some circles in international organizations have agenda of attacking Azerbaijan and discrediting our country and to present things in absolutely wrong way. That again is not a wound for us. It's maybe slight irritation, but we can live without that, believe me, and live successfully.
Yeah. Because you see it, you examine it, and if it's untrue, you reject it.
Of course, when the European Parliament adopted such an unfair and biased and wrong resolution, our Parliament adopted kind of not a resolution, but made a statement rejecting it. Of course, none of the unfriendly, unfair, and biased, and sometimes insulting moves against Azerbaijan are not responded. We respond seriously and with arguments. And when we bring these arguments, there's nothing to talk about. Why events in the neighborhood, in the Southern Caucasus, which create real concern, are not noticed, and only Azerbaijan? Why all the concentration is only on Azerbaijan?
And do you plan to carry on and run for a third term in this country? You've made that decision?
No, I did not. That will depend on the will of people. If people will continue to support me and support what I am doing, maybe I will consider that option. But again, it will depend on how people are evaluating what I'm doing and what is the level of their support.
And in terms of we've talked about the young democracy and so on, as you analyse the situation, the progress that's been made and so on, do you think there's further to go in terms of democracy, and there's further to go in terms of a free press, and there's further to go in terms of human rights, that you have started on this journey, but it's a journey that still has some way to go?
Without any doubts, of course, there are a lot of things to do in the future. We are just in the beginning of this long process. And again, I'd like to mention what I said previously, that we never had in our history a political system. We never had democratic institutions. If you look back to our history in ages before, you will never see any kind of a sign of political system. Therefore, what has been done during the last 20 or even less than 20 years was a tremendous achievement.
And so, ironically enough, one of the things to make it more and more of a mature democracy would be you need to create an opposition. You haven't got one of those.
Well, we have, but the fact that opposition is very weak is not our fault. We do not restrict them. But what has been done in Azerbaijan during several years just narrows their space, because there is nothing serious for them to argue about. On the issue of the most important issue of Nagorno Karabakh, our government is the strongest defender of our national interests. We hear some reports that some opposition leaders in their private communications with some foreign representatives were expressing their will to surrender, to give Nagorno Karabakh to Armenia in case if international forces support this opposition. During the last several years on economic track, we achieved unbelievable results. Therefore, nothing for them to argue. Believe me, GDP growth during the last 7 years was 300%. Therefore, what opposition has to argue about? Of course, there are shortcomings and things to be improved, but the more capable government is, it's natural, the less opposition has space for maneuver. Therefore, it will be up to them to find themselves in the new Azerbaijan. Unfortunately, today's opposition leaders are those who led the country to civil war in 92-93. The same leaders for 20 years sit on the same positions and do not want to resign.
When people get into office, they sometimes do that, don't they? They don't want to resign. What would you say is the division currently, and will it stay the same, in terms of the size of your exports in gas and in oil? What's the relative size?
Well, it's not comparable now because our major export is oil. We produce roughly 1 million barrels of oil, and biggest part of it is being exported. As far as gas is concerned, we relatively recently became a gas exporting country, and so far our export is limited by the regional markets. We have huge reserves. Proven reserves of gas in Azerbaijan is about 2.6 trillion cubic meters. But unlike oil business, in gas business you have to connect your transportation system to the consumers. Therefore, we need to build probably new pipelines or maybe to expand existing one in order to increase production. But we have these plans, and I think that in 7-10 years, Azerbaijan will be known in the world more for gas rather than for oil.
And of course, there is one other world organization that is very concerned about Azerbaijan and involved with Azerbaijan, and that, of course, is the Eurovision Song Contest. This is another important international issue, isn't it?
We did not expect it to become an international issue. we treated it as a song contest. But you know, in today's world, everything is so politicized. So you do not know when the song ends and politics starts.
We wish you a very successful contest here, and you can have a success. You don't have to win it again, but I mean, you can have a successful contest without winning it again too. We wish you a very good time with that, and thank you so much for this conversation, which I've greatly enjoyed.
Thank you very much.
Our thanks to President Aliyev there. As you could hear there, he speaks very good English, and indeed there's only one of 5 languages that he apparently speaks fluently. But now we're back in London, and this week the Palestinian group Hamas announced that it has reached a deal with Israel for the release of 1,027 prisoners in exchange for Gilad Shalit, the Israeli soldier who was captured by them in a cross-border raid in 2006. So after 5 years of failed talks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu even went as far as to tweet, "I am bringing Gilad Shalit home." Joining me now to discuss how this deal came to fruition, and what this means for the future is that senior Hamas official, Osama Hamdan from Beirut. Welcome to the program, Mr. Hamdan. Why did you decide this was the right moment to release Mr. Shalit, and why did the Israelis think this was the right moment to release more than 1,000 prisoners? Why was it now?
Well, I have to say clearly and frankly, we had done this part by part in the last 5 years. It wasn't done yet there was some chances which was sabotaged by the Israeli arrogance or being frightened from doing that, like what had happened with Prime Minister Olmert. Why it happened this moment? Because we were just talking about specific issues. They were solved one by one, and the big obstacle was 70 names of the most important leaders among the prisoners. At the end, the Israelis accepted to release around 52 of them, and that was a good number for us, although we wanted all of them, and the Israelis insist that they will not give more than this. So we reached a good arrangement.
And what about the situation with the Palestinian detainees who have to be deported because they're dangerous or whatever? The ones who have to be deported, where do deportees, where do they go? If they can't go to their homeland or whatever, where does a deportee go?
It's their choice, and what had happened was, with a complete contact with them, I think they will live for a while outside Palestine, but that doesn't mean they will not be in touch with their families, with their cause, with their people, because if we have to realize hundreds of Palestinians were deported during the last 4 decades, and at the end of the story was every time that they were home back.
Do you think you got a remarkably good deal? 1,000 people released for one person released?
It's a remarkable deal. Part of that, the numbers. And there is also important points. There was people from Jerusalem who were released, which was not accepted by the Israelis for decades. There was Arabs who were released, which the Israelis tried to prevent that. There was people who committed militant operations against the Israelis directly, and they were also released.
Obviously, in the case of any negotiations, you would have to change some things too. You would have to agree some things you haven't agreed before. That's the only way negotiations can work, isn't it?
The Israelis must change, not the Palestinians, because the struggle for 6 decades was to implement the Palestinian rights, to take back the Palestinian land from the occupiers, which did not appear that it's clear for the Israelis yet.
Well, we thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we hope the tune of progress continues in the Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
In a moment, we'll be talking about Iraq, the Euro, and we'll meet a man revered by millions of rock fans all over the world, the one and only Peter Gabriel. That's all after this short break. We're coming right back.